Welcome to Raul Effect, where we uncover the hidden psychology behind love, attachment, emotional distance, and the lessons that help you reclaim your confidence and inner peace. What if the person who hurt you eventually realizes that losing you was the consequence of their own fears? The truth is, healing is not about waiting for them to regret what they did. It is about reaching the point where their regret no longer controls your peace. They may one day understand your value, but by then, you may have already discovered something far more important. Your value was never dependent on their ability to see it. There is something I need to explain with complete honesty because softening this subject would only weaken the truth. This is not the kind of justice where someone hurts you and then receives an equal consequence that suddenly makes everything feel fair. Real emotional consequences rarely work that neatly. What happens inside an avoidant after deeply hurting someone they genuinely valued is far more complicated. The person they pushed away may have meant much more to them than they ever consciously understood. Even when their behavior showed distance, withdrawal, or emotional coldness, that connection could still have occupied a powerful place inside their emotional world. And betrayal is not always obvious. Sometimes betrayal looks like disappearing when someone needed closeness, withholding reassurance when vulnerability was required, repeatedly creating warmth and distance, giving someone hope and then withdrawing it, or accepting sincere love without being willing to offer the same emotional presence in return. The avoidant may not have intended these actions to cause deep damage. They may not even realize how deeply their behavior affected the other person. But the person receiving that treatment feels it. Those moments can leave emotional and psychological wounds that remain long after the relationship changes. Meanwhile, something much quieter begins happening inside the avoidant. To understand that process, you have to understand why they were unable to recognize the value of the connection while they still had it. Their lack of awareness was not a minor part of the story. It was one of the main reasons they made the choices they did. Avoidant attachment can distort the way someone experiences emotional importance. They may underestimate how deeply connected they are while the relationship is still available, while simultaneously overestimating their ability to cope with losing it. The defenses that protect them from emotional pain can also prevent them from fully appreciating love, safety, and emotional security. That creates a painful contradiction. They can possess something rare and meaningful while believing they could walk away from it and return whenever they felt ready. So they withdraw. They become inconsistent. They fail to show up. They assume the relationship will remain available despite repeated neglect or emotional distance. Somewhere in their mind, they believe they still have time. But some relationships cannot survive endless uncertainty. Some forms of love cannot simply be paused, neglected, and recovered whenever someone finally becomes ready. Once trust and emotional safety have been damaged deeply enough, understanding the mistake later does not automatically restore what existed before. The hardest part is that the consequences usually do not appear immediately. In the beginning, the avoidance defenses can become even stronger. Their mind minimizes painful emotions, explains away uncomfortable memories, and creates a version of events that feels easier to tolerate. From the outside, this can look like complete indifference. And for the person who was hurt, that appearance can be devastating. You may start believing that none of it mattered to them. But what looks like effortless detachment is not always genuine emotional freedom. Sometimes it is simply a defense working extremely hard. The calm exterior can be a way of keeping overwhelming emotions underneath the surface. Fully acknowledging the loss too soon could challenge the very emotional system they depend on to feel safe and independent. But defenses cannot silence reality forever. Eventually, something changes. The avoidant begins to encounter evidence that the person they assumed would always remain accessible has actually moved forward. The distance is no longer temporary. The door they believed could be reopened whenever they wanted may no longer be open. And that realization can be far more powerful than any argument, explanation, or confrontation, because for the first time, they are forced to face a reality their defenses once allowed them to avoid. You may truly have built a life without them. You are not trying to make them jealous or prove anything anymore. You have genuinely moved on. The emotional attention that once revolved around them has been redirected toward your healing, your growth, and your peace. You are no longer waiting for them to change, hoping they will return, or measuring your happiness by what they decide to do. Sometimes they realize this by seeing how different you have become. Maybe they encounter you briefly, hear about you through someone else, or come across a simple photograph. Suddenly they are looking at someone calmer, stronger, more confident, and more at ease with themselves. The self-respect you developed after the relationship becomes impossible for them to overlook. That moment can begin a psychological reckoning far deeper than ordinary regret. It does not usually happen dramatically. Instead, it begins quietly inside their thoughts. They start remembering the relationship with a clarity they simply did not have while they were living through it. For the first time, they begin understanding what they actually had and how their own choices contributed to losing it. This is not merely missing the past. It is a completely different perception of the past. After months or even years of suppressing uncomfortable emotions, the barriers begin weakening, and everything they once pushed away can return with surprising force. The version of you they had minimized in their mind starts disappearing, replaced by the person you actually were. They remember your patience, emotional depth, consistency, compassion, and the unusual way you understood parts of them they struggled to understand themselves. They begin realizing that your patience was never weakness. It was strength, generosity, and genuine commitment. Then something even harder begins. They stop looking only at what they lost and start looking at what they did. They remember the moments when they could have stayed close but chose distance. They remember conversations where you needed reassurance and they responded with silence. They recognize the cycle they created, moving closer when they feared losing you, then retreating as soon as real intimacy became possible. They begin seeing how they offered enough affection to keep the connection alive while withholding the emotional openness necessary to make it truly secure. What once seemed justified now looks like a pattern that slowly destroyed something they depended on more than they understood. They may also remember how often you responded to their distance with kindness instead of resentment, how much emotional weight you carried without receiving equal effort, and how freely you gave understanding they had not necessarily earned. That realization can create something deeper than regret: shame. They are forced to confront the painful truth that someone loved them sincerely while they responded from fear rather than courage. For an avoidant, that can be one of the hardest things to face because it exposes a version of themselves they spent years protecting themselves from seeing. When I say this kind of betrayal can damage an avoidant's life, I do not mean their career collapses or everything around them suddenly falls apart. They may continue working, socializing, succeeding, and appearing perfectly fine. The consequence is much quieter. They lose access to a version of themselves that began emerging through the relationship. Around you, parts of them may have become softer, more open, emotionally alive, and authentic. Your steady presence created an environment where those hidden qualities could surface. By repeatedly withdrawing and choosing emotional protection over genuine connection, they may have destroyed the very environment that allowed those healthier parts of themselves to grow. And now they know what was possible. Before meeting you, they could not miss an experience they had never known. After losing you, they carry the awareness that deep understanding, acceptance, and emotional safety were once real. That knowledge can change how future relationships feel. The independence they once considered freedom may eventually begin feeling more like limitation. They can build a successful life and still experience an unexplained emptiness. They may enter new relationships that function well on the surface, but never reach the same emotional depth. Those thoughts may appear during quiet evenings, unexpected memories, or moments when they realize something is missing and cannot easily explain why. There is another consequence that matters just as much. Repeated choices shape identity. Every time an avoidant chooses protection instead of vulnerability, withdrawal instead of emotional presence, and fear instead of openness, those patterns become easier to repeat. Eventually, the distance between who they genuinely are and the emotionally protected person they show the world can become even greater. So the betrayal does not simply end one relationship. If they never confront their patterns, it can strengthen the very defenses that caused the loss in the first place. From the outside, their life may still look organized, successful, and completely under control. But underneath that appearance, they may be living with the quiet knowledge of what they lost, what they could have become, and how their own defenses helps take it away. Even if their life looks completely fine from the outside, there can still be a private awareness they cannot permanently escape. Somewhere inside, they may know that something deeply meaningful was placed in front of them, and they did not know how to receive it. They had an opportunity to grow, become more emotionally open, and experience a deeper form of intimacy, but fear felt safer than vulnerability. That realization may not occupy their mind every day, yet it can quietly influence how they approach future relationships and how they see themselves whenever their defenses finally become quiet enough for honest reflection. But as we reach the end of this, I want you to focus on something more important than whether they eventually regret what they did. It is completely understandable to feel some relief knowing that your pain did not simply disappear into nothing, and that the person who hurt you may have emotional consequences of their own. There is nothing wrong with acknowledging that, but your healing cannot remain centered on them. The most meaningful part of this story is what happened inside you. While they were using emotional defenses to avoid difficult feelings, you were forced to face yours. You grieved, you reflected, you questioned yourself, you rebuilt. And through that process, you developed something far more valuable than an apology from them could ever provide. You developed self-respect that no longer depends on being chosen by someone else. You built confidence based on your own character, rather than another person's ability to recognize your worth. You learned that loving deeply is not a weakness. It is a strength, especially when that love is guided by honesty, boundaries, and emotional courage. The avoidant may never have understood what they were risking because fear distorted their ability to see the value of the relationship while they still had access to it. They treated something precious as though it could always be recovered later. They made permanent decisions while believing they still had unlimited time. But when the relationship ended, the consequences did not disappear. The temporary relief created by emotional distance eventually had to compete with the lasting reality of what was lost. The walls that once made them feel safe could also become the walls that kept genuine intimacy away. And that matters because it reminds you that your experience was real. The impact was not limited to your side of the relationship. But even more important is what the experience created inside you. Through confusion, disappointment, silence, heartbreak, and grief, you discovered parts of yourself that might never have emerged otherwise. You developed stronger boundaries. You gained emotional wisdom. You became clearer about what you deserve. And you learned that your worth does not rise or fall based on whether another person has the emotional capacity to recognize it. Your pain did not automatically make you stronger. You became stronger because you chose to face the pain instead of allowing it to define you. The avoidant may have lost the relationship because they could not recognize its value in time. They may also have lost an opportunity to become a more open and emotionally authentic version of themselves. Your presence may have created space for that growth, but they were unable to appreciate the opportunity before it disappeared. Your outcome can be completely different. You can walk away from the experience carrying more self-awareness, greater emotional strength, clearer standards, and a deeper understanding of who you are. The pain may never become something you wanted, but it can become something that taught you what no one else could teach you. That is why this story should never ultimately be about an avoidance regret. Their regret belongs to their journey. Your transformation belongs to you. Their loss may have been the person they failed to value while they had the chance. Your gain can be discovering that your identity was never dependent on someone else's ability to choose you. The confidence you built, the clarity you earned, and the knowledge that you deserve mutual love, consistency, honesty, and commitment are now part of you. No person's fear or emotional limitations can take those things away. And there is one final lesson I want you to remember. Do not make the mistake of believing your healing is complete only when the avoidant finally realizes what they lost. Maybe they will understand. Maybe they will regret it. Maybe they will apologize or even try to return. But none of those outcomes should become the destination of your healing. Too many people keep their emotional freedom on hold, waiting for the person who hurt them to finally understand. They believe peace will arrive when the avoidant feels regret, admits their mistakes, returns, or receive some lesson from life. But if your peace depends on their awakening, then your peace is still controlled by them. Real healing asks you to reclaim your life before they ever understand your value. It asks you to build your future without waiting for someone else's emotional awareness to catch up. Whether they eventually understand everything or never fully face it, your opportunity to create a peaceful, meaningful, fulfilling life exists right now. And the moment you stop measuring your healing by what is happening inside them, something powerful changes inside you. You stop waiting for closure and start creating it. You stop watching their journey and start living your own. Because healing is not necessarily about becoming incapable of loving the person who hurt you. It is about reaching the point where you can remember what happened without allowing it to control where your life goes next. Love does not disappear simply because someone hurt you. Healing does not require pretending you never cared. What changes is the place that love holds in your life. In the beginning, they may occupy your thoughts, your memories, and your unanswered questions. But slowly, you realize their choices never determined your worth. You begin to understand that loving someone deeply does not mean they have the ability to receive that love. Their emotional limitations are not proof that you were too much. They simply reveal that two people can care while being at completely different levels of readiness. The experience also reveals your strength. You learn to stop chasing inconsistency, confusing potential with commitment, or believing patience can fix someone unwilling to face themselves. Closure is not something they give you. It is built every day you choose yourself, protect your boundaries, and refuse to abandon your own needs just to keep someone who repeatedly failed to meet you. Your healing does not depend on whether the avoidant regrets losing you. Their realization belongs to their journey, but your growth belongs to you. You survived the distance, the confusion, and the heartbreak, and you came out with stronger boundaries and a deeper understanding of your worth. The greatest victory is not making them miss you. It is becoming so secure in yourself that you no longer need their regret to feel whole. If this message resonated with you, like the video and subscribe to Raul Effect for more insights on attachment, healing, self-worth, and emotional relationships.